It's a great opportunity to be actually talking to you today. I want to spend a little bit of time today just giving you a brief introduction to the organisation I work for. And then really the topic of conversation is about electricity and how to manage it as a fuel for your vehicles. So Asset Works, the organisation I represent, are a global player based out of the US. We have a UK base up in Manchester. A very sizable organisation. We belong to a bigger group called the Constellation organisation, which trades on the Toronto Stock Exchange. But let me just give you some more background. So we manage currently something like 14 million assets worldwide. We have something like over 575 customers who are actually running our solutions. What we're really proud of is that that customer base is sort of on a 97% retention rate. We've been around in this sector, providing solutions and expert advice for over 40 years now. Just to give you some granularity on that customer base, we have clients that fall into every potential sector of operation. So everything from cities, counties, UK councils, distribution organisations, right the way through to airlines and even university fleets. So as I said, it's a real cross-section. I've mixed some clients there from both the UK and the US. Our largest client in the UK is Royal Mail, who represent the largest distribution fleet in the UK and have been a client of ours for over 30 years. Predominantly, we're famous for our Fleet Focus software, but we cover a whole ecosystem of solutions that actually support the whole environment of managing a fleet, from fueling to fuel cards to managing remote and unmanned parking environments. That's what we call Key Valet, to managing all of those assets with an integrated smart apps, handheld devices that core end users like drivers, technicians, and workshop managers can actually use for managing their fleet operations. So the emerging world of EVs is dramatically changing how lots of organisations manage their fleets, especially as we drive from this process of traditional ICE operations into a transitional area of putting in EV infrastructure. It's like no other fuel. That is really the number one thing to take on board. Besides it being obviously a very clean type of fuel, it does put different demands on an organisation. And there are things that we need to consider. Probably the key and most important thing is how we source that electricity. And for operational fleets, that can mean not just taking directly off the grid, but it can also mean that we're actually starting to look at vehicles in transit, where they charge and who they're charged by. It's also important to look at who's supplying that electricity, because that has quite a dramatic impact on your rates. And as energy costs are increasing quite dramatically, the impact of electricity increasing, as well as ice-based fuels, is still quite prolific. What we need to remember is that an average cost per kilowatt is based on time usage, the demand that you may have, and there are some other factors that we'll have a look at in this presentation. So the most important thing is, as you're looking at charging infrastructure, it's the integration into the back office software, especially if you're running across different types of distribution suppliers, and you're looking at a mixture of different types of charging devices across different types of assets. The important thing is how you consolidate all that information coming back into your organization, so you're getting accurate information around your EV charging, but also you're getting best of breed expenditure around those EVs. So if you look at the actual charging devices, there are some issues that you need to take into consideration. And again, top of the list is making sure that the integration into your management software is completely watertight. But if you look at the sort of things that go wrong with these charging devices, the issues tend to be around the software management around these various different devices. Two most important things is actually understanding what is your real charging requirement. And it's actually understanding what the different types of chargers are that are out there for those different types of assets. If you look at your company cars, you look at those sorts of charging, it's a different type of charge requirement from the larger commercial vehicles that are starting to appear in the market. Don't panic. Electricity costs are manageable despite the complexities, but you need to take control of certain things from an early stage. The most important thing is actually charging assets at the right time of the day. Understanding the speed of charging is also quite relevant, but I would actually say that the bottom in the CAN control area is having a good relationship with the utility provider and understanding the variable rates that they can provide you for charging your different assets. And then understanding the peaks and troughs of the demand. There are certain assets that will operate in your fleet that really should be charged at certain times of the day. And then the bits that you can't control are your operational shifts. Your charging has to work around those operational shifts. And that can really have an impact on your costs. In very simple terms, we have potentially different charging periods throughout the day, and you really need to match your assets to those charging periods. The biggest issue is that you may need to look at different types of demands on your charging, where you may need to look at some form of mobile charging devices for certain types of assets. Again, it's the quality of the data that you're getting from these types of devices during these operational areas, which will give you some clarity over a very short period of time of when it's best to charge certain devices throughout the working day. Without a doubt, you have potentially the benefits of internal charging operations that are pulling off the grid. They can often be considerably cheaper because they're easier to manage. It's the minute you get into the unknown of using public and network roaming charging that you need to manage that area around the drivers and the assets that are going out there. And actually having that conversation and managing the individuals that are driving these vehicles to make sure they're going to the right type of charging facilities. And yes, the big hint, you need to have the right software that can consolidate all that information into one unique platform back into your management systems. And that to a certain extent is what AssetWorks is all about, because part of our offering is a solution to manage the complexities around EV fueling of your fleet. The first action you really need to do is, as you've probably worked out, is map your scheduling of charging. This is really to make sure that you're planning what assets need charging at what particular times of the day to get you the best financial advantage from the various different providers. Then the other area is, the demand is really about speed of charging. So certain assets can be on a longer trickle charge because their demand isn't as great. Other assets will need to be charged more frequently. These are all considerations you need to take on board when you're looking at your fleet. So that speed of charging can have an impact on the types of assets that you're actually acquiring. And again, it's something that AssetWorks provides as a service, is making sure you're getting the right replacement assets for the right elements for your fleet operation. You really need to be talking to utility providers, and you really need to be understanding, have you got the right utility provider for the type of fleet, EV fleet you want to run? You need to make sure that you're getting the best possible rates from them, because once you start to move on to EV fleets, the demand of those charges can become very expensive very quickly. And it should be something that's in constant review. And again, this is one way about keeping the costs down of your EV fleet. The next thing, and I alluded to it a little bit earlier on, is understanding the types of assets that you're buying actually are fit for purpose. They're fit for your fleet operation. And then making sure that those assets that you're actually considering, that you can actually charge them effectively, and your charging infrastructure is built around the types of assets that you're acquiring. There are a number of alternatives for collating that charging information. We also provide the infrastructure for doing that. I would be very concerned around using telematics because it has a drain on the electricity, and often the information that you're getting over a period of time, which is something that we've seen with some of our clients, that there's a charging loss, which where you're managing charging reimbursements can be impacted by relying purely on telematics for that information. Just to wrap up, my closing thoughts are really around understanding the different types of charging and what's the most cost-effective options. Generally, you've got AC or DC charging facilities, and that's basically based around the size of the vehicles that you're operating. You really need to make sure that you have the right type of devices for your fleet. Understand very early on and talk to utility providers when you're looking about putting charging units in on your sites. It's quite easy if you're not careful to actually find that the charging units are inadequate for where your fleet direction is going in the future. So your units need to be future-proof. The next and most important thing is you're aggregating software that manages all the different charging devices you're implementing is critical to your fueling going forward. And you need to know that you can be able to pull all that information into one platform to give you that accurate analysis of what your total energy use is. So Asset Works as an organization, just to give you some idea, if you haven't picked it up already, we're a very large organization. We're extremely financially stable as part of the Constellation Group. We've been advising organizations and providing solutions for well over 40 odd years. Our software is used by some premier organizations. And as I mentioned earlier on, it is part of a full fleet ecosystem, which has touch points from providing not just the background software, but providing actual fuel and fuel management infrastructure, right the way to providing specialist telemetry for certain types of fleet. And it all sits in the one platform. Our whole concept is about driving sustainability and driving our clients to a carbon neutral environment that is best practice for their organizations. If you want to hear more about what we do, please don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you very much.